I mean, I feel bad for the animals, but I also feel bad for the workers. I feel bad for the whole system. So this is an industry that enslaves animals, puts them behind bars, and in some sense it does the same to people. People start accepting bad as normal. And I think we need to challenge assumptions. We need to take responsibility for our own actions and make choices that are consistent with our own values and our own interests. And I think as that happens, change is inevitable. And it's going to be important for us to be citizens, not just consumers. And here's a series of quotes that I really like. Each snowflake in an avalanche pleads not guilty. Everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing himself. And how wonderful it is that nobody need wait a single moment before starting to improve the world. And every day we eat. And what we choose to eat is among the most important choices we make every day, with the most profound consequences, both immediate in terms of our own health, but wide-ranging in terms of the health of the planet and in terms of the well-being of other animals and in terms of our collective relationship with other animals. Because I think, violence to animals speaks to a broader concern of violence and callousness and disrespect and disregard for others, human or other animal. And then this is a quote I love from Margaret Mead. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever does. And I think that that's who we are here, folks. We're that small group of thoughtful, committed citizens. And, the world is changing. And we're making progress. We have a long way to go, but we are making progress. And change happens in two ways. One is through the legislative or sort of policy realm. And that's very slow and tedious. Getting Proposition 2 on the ballot in California, was a lot of work. There were thousands of volunteers that put in a lot of time to get the signatures, and then a fair bit of money was spent also to get the message on TV, and we were able to do it. So it's an important way to make change through legislation and other policy efforts. But the other way change happens is through individual choices. And that's something that's much easier. Every day, each of us can make choices. But it's important to be involved with both of those. But those are generally the two ways change happens. And then I'll finally leave with just a happy picture of a pig at Farm Sanctuary and reiterate my invitation to you all to come visit, either in Orland, California or Watkins Glen, New York. We have bed and breakfast cabins. You can actually come stay overnight. And with that, I'll take questions. All right. Great. Thank you. I think he had his hand up first. Yeah. Yeah, I think corporate industrial farming really took off right after World War II. Because a lot of the sort of capital that had been utilized towards the war effort was now going towards industrial development in the U.S. Now, it started earlier than that, like after the Civil War, in fact, when the railroad system came into being, you had the beef industry starting to pick up, and you had sort of the Industrial Revolution, and so the meat industry was part of that. In the 1930s, the chicken industry started industrializing, but I would say that when it really took off was after World War II. Yeah. Now the question has to do with, downed and diseased animals getting to the food supply, and whether we've worked with a group called Safe Tables Our Priority, STOP, and whether we would also be able to encourage them to take a position against all meat as opposed to just preventing tainted meat from getting to the food supply. And we have been in touch with Safe Tables Our Priority and other consumer groups and other more kind of mainstream advocacy organizations who agree that downed animals should not get into the food supply, and they believe that these diseased animals should not get into the food supply. We are also constantly urging them to recognize that we don't need to eat any animal products and that they should promote the benefits of a plant-based lifestyle. That's an ongoing process. So we agree on certain things and we work together on certain things in the near term while we continue to advocate for a longer term and a broader solution to this big problem. Because I think, a vegan lifestyle addresses so many things. It addresses our own health, it addresses the environment, it addresses animals, And there's a lot of interfacing, I think, with the local food movement, with slow food even. Now, sometimes slow food promotes things that we vehemently disagree with. They would promote foie gras consumption, for example. Foie gras means fatty liver in French, and it's produced by jamming a pipe down the throats of ducks and geese to force feed them to cause their liver to expand 10 times its normal size. So it's a horribly cruel process and a horribly cruel product that groups like Slow Food would say is a artisan type of business. We disagree with that. But we agree with the general principle that people should be more mindful about their eating and should eat more slowly and more deliberatively and in a way that they're appreciating their food. So there are some interfacing, I think, with groups like Slow Food, with Safe Tables, our priority, with environmental groups. And I'm really happy to say that there's more environmental groups now that are supporting efforts to ban factory farming. There's also, I think, a recognition, even in USDA, the new USDA secretary recently broke concrete in Washington, D.C. at the USDA headquarters to build a community garden. Now, community gardening is one very positive solution and a very positive way for people to connect with their food and to obtain healthy plant-based foods. There's also farmers markets, which are, I think, growing across the country. There's CSA programs, community-supported agriculture programs. So these are all very positive mechanisms whereby consumers get more connected to their food and obtain healthier plant-based foods. So I think we're in the midst right now of a nascent food movement in this country, and it gives me great hope. Did you have a question? Yeah. Yeah, the question is, why are these animals downed? Is it because of starvation or hormones or what? Well, in the case of dairy cows, they're pushed very hard. A dairy cow is pushed to produce 10 times more milk than she would normally. During most of her life, she's in a state of what they call negative energy balance. I'll give you sort of a year in the life of a dairy cow, for instance. So January 1st, she gives birth. Her calf is taken away from her, and she goes into the milk stream. So she's now being milked 2 or 3 times a day. This goes on up until about March, and then she's re-impregnated because, they need her to give birth again the following year to keep profitable. So now from March through October, she's pregnant and giving an enormous amount of milk. She cannot eat enough food to keep the weight on her body. So she's losing weight. She's in a state of negative energy balance. 2 months before giving birth again, in January or perhaps February, she is reconditioned, which means that they stop milking her, they infuse her udders with a solution so she stops giving milk, and then she is fed grain, and during this whole time she's been eating grain because eating grass, which she would normally eat, would not come close to meeting her energy needs. So she's reconditioned so she can put some more weight on her body for the next 2 months, and then she gives birth again, and the cycle begins again. So these cows are pushed very, very hard, and their bodies just wear out. Sometimes when they give birth, they have difficult births, and they have paralysis in their back legs, so that's one way they become down. They have lameness issues because their diet actually contributes to something called laminitis, where their hoofs become very painful, and they have difficulty walking. And so this is where downed cows come from. In the case of pigs, there's something called porcine stress syndrome, and the industry has tried to genetically breed pigs to be leaner. When I was at Cornell University, in fact, I went into the swine unit there, and they have an active one, and they had this boar, a breeding male pig called a boar, and his name was Arnold Schwarzenegger. And the reason they called him that was because he was so ripped, he had these muscles. But he was so high-strung that whenever he would breed, he would pass out. And they were afraid he was going to die. So the industry has been breeding pigs to be very lean, to meet the demand for lean meat. But in doing so, they've also bred pigs that are more stressed. So when they're transporting them, these stressed pigs pass out. and they become downed animals. So that's one cause of downed pigs. So it varies from industry to industry, but it's generally because they're pushed too hard during the production cycle or on the genetic side in terms of the breeding practices. And then they're also usually subjected to stressful transportation, stressful handling, and sometimes they're injured. You know, like that cow whose picture I showed, whose neck was broken when she was separated from her calf. Oh, they're shocked with electric prods, absolutely, and whipped and all these things, and beaten. You know, it's all bad. It's all real bad stuff, you know.